Gracias por su paciencia.
Thank you. We'll now come to order. We appreciate your presence and attendance here today at the regularly scheduled meeting of the Los Angeles City Council. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bernson, Galanter, Garcetti, Gruel, Hahn, Holden, Labange, Miskowski, Pacheco, Perry, Reyes, Ridley Thomas, Weiss, Sine, Padilla, 10 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. We do have presentations today, and it would seem to me that they would be in order. I would want to proceed, but as is our tradition, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to ask that all persons in the chamber please arise, and if Mr. Weiss, if you'd be kind enough to lead us in the pledge.
you could please face the flag and place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business, Mr. Clerk.
Approval of the minutes.
Ms. Zakowski moves, Mr. Labange seconds.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Ms. Perry moves, and Ms. Gruhl seconds.
Mr. President, before starting the regular agenda, item number 22, there's a request from Council District 1 to continue that matter till November 26th.
All right. As requested, Mr. Clerk, let me then ask that we proceed with the matters before us. There are two special presentations that we want to take care of. We're going to ask that we allow Councilmember Ed Reyes to proceed, and then the second will follow appropriately. Mr. Reyes for a special presentation.
Good morning, council members. Thank you for taking this time to present to you Dr. Mario Antonio Ruiz and Manuel Garcia. Dr. Ruiz is the president of the University of Francisco Gavidia in El Salvador. Dr. Ruiz is visiting our city to promote his university to create partnerships with universities locally and nationally in the hopes of promoting e-commerce, which is the doctor's specialty. Locally, he has already created a partnership with nearby Woodbury University, while nationally he has established a working relationship with Georgetown University. And council, the reason why I think this is so important for us to understand and recognize is that the second most populated Salvadoran community, other than in Salvador, is in Los Angeles. And we look at Los Angeles as the international economic center when it comes to our trade with the rest of the Western Hemisphere, our trade with the Asian Pacific countries. We are that gateway. And for that reason, we must do our best to make sure that our partners in trade continue to evolve in as much as the United States is evolving, in as much as our communities, our neighborhoods are evolving. And for that, I want to thank them for their effort, for their partnership, and for their support in making sure that we maintain this strong umbilical cord that continues to nurture our neighborhoods here in the city. So for that, this is a certificate of recognition to Mario A. Ruiz for your ongoing dedication and support of the Salvadoran community here in Los Angeles, as well as in El Salvador. Thank you very much. Dr. Ruiz would like to say a few words.
Muchas gracias, concejal. Señores miembros del Consejo de la Ciudad de Los Ángeles, distinguido público asistente, reciban un cordial saludo de toda la comunidad de salvadoreños, tanto los residentes en los Estados Unidos como la comunidad de salvadoreños residentes en El Salvador. Quiero agradecerles en primer lugar este reconocimiento que se me hace, el cual es un galardón que guardaré siempre en mi corazón. Muchas gracias a todos y a cada uno de ustedes, muy amables.
Distinguished member of the City Council and those attending this important meeting, we would like to provide the best regards from the Salvadorian community in El Salvador. We want to thank you for this recognition of the work that Universidad Francisco Gavidia is doing to strengthen the relationship between Salvadorians in El Salvador and Salvadorians in Los Angeles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes, for bringing these distinguished guests. Welcome. The chair at this time would like to recognize Councilmember Mark Ridley Thomas for a presentation.
Madam President, members of the council, we often talk about the need for community and business partnerships. And we know if business leaders are committed to making a positive difference in the areas in which they do business, that we all can, in fact, benefit. Well, today I'm pleased to acknowledge a man who not only understands that commitment, but has a long record of community service here in the city of Los Angeles. Charles Chuck Smith, the President and CEO of SBC Pacific Bell and SBC Nevada Bell. Mr. Smith, won't you join me? Give him a hand, won't you? Tell them I can hear them. For 35 years, Chuck Smith has been dedicated to his work at SBC Pacific Bell and has given valuable contributions to the telecommunications industry. But what's truly made him stand out among the field of CEOs is his community service work. Mr. Smith is one of the founders of community involvement teams in every sector, now known as Community Network, the Association of African American Employees at SBC Pacific Bell. He also serves on the boards of Professional Women of SBC and the Hispanic Employees Association, as well as on the advisory board of Spectrum, the Association of Gay and Lesbian Employees. His work also extends to various boards of the University of California, both Berkeley and Davis campuses. And I know the University of Southern California is glad to have him as chair of the Center for the Telecommunications Management Board. Beyond this work, though, Mr. Smith is a native Angelino, has truly found unique ways to make valuable contributions to the communities of Los Angeles. For the past 9 years, he has chaired the United Negro College Fund Walkathon here in our city, and I'm pleased to indicate that it is launched from the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza in the 8th District for many of those years. He's also an advisor for the Magic Johnson Foundation, the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, and a member of the Los Angeles Board of Urban League, the Los Angeles Urban League Board of Directors, where he most recently finished an exceptional stint as chair of that board. Mr. Smith is the proud father of 2 children, and one of whom is a professor at MIT, and a daughter at USC. Married for more than 30 years to Burl. Chuck Smith is an asset of large proportion here in the city of Los Angeles, and it gives me a great degree of pride to bring him before you now and to acknowledge him for his contributions, those that have been made and those that he will continue to make to the civic life and well-being of Los Angeles. I give you now Charles Chuck Smith.
Good morning. Certainly, I want to thank the councilman and certainly thank the men and women of the city of Los Angeles and the council for the great leadership in bestowing this wonderful honor on me for the work that I've done here in the city of Los Angeles. It is great pride and certainly a privilege to serve this great city in a number of nonprofit activities, but more importantly, in the community where we, the men and women of SBC, try to dedicate our work to make our community a better place to live and work. I thank all of my friends and colleagues in my company, and more importantly, I thank the men and women of the city of Los Angeles and all of the professional staff in this great council. You all are wonderful people, and you have done much to serve this great city and make it possible for me to do my work. So I thank you. Mark, thank you very much, and it is my honor to accept this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's all right.
Thank you. The chair would like to recognize before you leave Councilmember Holden.
You know, Mr. Chuck Smith is an institution. As he received this commendation today, it speaks very loudly about what he's been able to do, but it's not the whole story. And we can't tell the whole story about his accomplishments and what that which he's given back to the city of Los Angeles, the people of the state of California. This fine person who rose through the ranks in his company that he and I represent so well, but he's trained so many individuals who speak so very highly of you that I know in telephone company. If you want to know how to get the job done, ask Mr. Chuck Smith. He'll guide you through the process, no matter how impacted the maze may be, he'll get you through. And those are wonderful stories about what you've done for those individuals, that they will carry with them for the rest of their lives and pass on to future generations. And sometime I know in the not too distant future they'll be saying, well, Chuck said, let's do it this way. Mr. Smith said, let's do it that way. And you know, in our community, when there's a problem, you're one of the guys, key guys, who they don't make a lot of noise about in the newspapers. But we know they call upon you. We know they ask for your advice. We know that you provide for that kind of input. And we know that your comments and your position is always well respected by the leadership of the city of Los Angeles and the business community. You're at the high point, and you've earned your position there. And we appreciate that, what you've done for us, all of us, and we love you for having done it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holden.
Thank you, Madam
Thomas.
President.
Mr. Clerk?
Madam President, on the regular agenda, you also have city official appointments. Item number 2 is the appointment of Alma Marie Carlisle to the Cultural Heritage Commission. There is an Arts, Health, and Humanities Committee report recommendation on this appointment.
Is Ms. Marie Carlisle here? Would you please come forward and take the center table? Members, are there anyone wishing to speak on this matter? If not, then let me ask that we open the roll. Ms. Carlisle is here. Yes, Ms. Carlisle, did you want to address us?
Good morning.
Sit down, please.
Good morning. First, I'd like to say just how pleased I am to be here this morning to enjoy the splendor of this beautifully restored building.
All right. Okay. We do have a committee report recommending the confirmation of this appointment. Mr. Chair recognizes Mr. Holden.
Arts, Health, and Humanity Commission. It's a wonderful commission. Lots of responsibility. Consumes a lot of your time. And I'm sure you have the time to give to this commission, or you would not accept the nomination. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's right. And you live in my district. How long have you lived in the 10th district? Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Shouldn't have asked the question in the first place. The fact of the matter is that as a practice, we do work very closely with the people that that's nominated by the mayor and that we finally vote to confirm. And sometimes in our respective districts, all we want is the open door policy to swing both ways. Mm-hmm. And that you may not always agree with what we share with you or vice versa. It doesn't mean that we are against, it doesn't, nothing to do with the individual. Okay, it's all about how can you best serve our community. And that's what we look forward to, working together to do that. And since you're from the 10th district, certainly we have the interests of the community at heart first. That comes first. That's always been my policy, and I'm sure that'll be yours. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to talk to you before you came before the council today, but I wanted to be able to talk to, maybe you call, I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Maybe one of my deputies to talk to you, but I want you to know that I'm very pleased to vote for your confirmation.
Thank you.
All right, and I look forward to working with you in the coming months ahead.
And I look forward to calling you in the future.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you. Hello, how are you?
All right, there is no one else wishing to speak, so members, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That matter is approved, and you are confirmed. Thank you for your service.
And thank you.
They will send that forthwith to the mayor. Next item.
Item number 3 is also city officials, the appointment of Julieta Lamano Wells to the Disabled Access Appeals Commission. There is also Arts, Health, and Humanities Committee report recommendation.
Is Ms. Lamana Wells with us? I don't see her coming present. All right. She's not able to be here today, but we do have a recommendation from Arts, Health, and Humanities Committee also confirming this. If there is no objection and no one wishes to speak on the council, let us open the roll on this confirmation. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That matter is also approved, and we will send that as well forthwith.
Madam President, item number 1 on the regular agenda is an item notice for public hearing.
All right, we do have cards. We have a card submitted on item number 1. Let me call at this time to speak at the podium Mark Henry Williams. Is Mr. Williams present?
Yes. Good morning, council members. Mark Williams, I'm the attorney for Cholinos Bar, Teresco's Cafe, and we are merely asking that you rescind the time restrictions and allow the bar to stay open until 2 a.m. The bar does a lot of business between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., and to require them to close at 11 p.m. would significantly and substantially impact the income that the bar receives, and a lot of people support families who are employed by this bar. So that would really be a harsh impact on them. And the bar is not a nuisance. There are some problems that have occurred around the bar, surrounding the bar, but those are just problems that are just part of the community. There is a gang like right across the street from the bar. I believe it's called the 38th Street Gang. So a lot of problems that have occurred surrounding the bar and have been attributed to Cholinos Cafe are actually just things that would have occurred whether it was there or not there. And furthermore, in August of 2001, the bar had applied for a permit to have a dance hall. And all the members of the community were given an opportunity, I believe approximately 15 days, to object if they had any problems with the bar getting a permit for a dance hall. And no one objected at that time. And then the bar subsequently invested a lot of money to make certain upgrades. So to require them to close now at 11 p.m. would really be a significant hardship on them, and we request that the appeal of Connie Escobedo be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, members. This is a Planning and Land Use Management Committee report on a zoning administrator action under appeal. This is in Council District 9. The chair would like to recognize Councilmember Perry.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I hope that my colleagues will join me today in denying this applicant's appeal and upholding or adopting the findings of the zoning administrator. This bar, which is located at 38th and Main in the 9th Council District, is simply a nuisance. There have been a number of violations that have raised concerns for quite a while with both the community and the police department. The Coalition for Economic Survival, a nonprofit advocacy group in the 9th District in South Los Angeles, brought over 20 people to testify against this bar at the Planning and Land Use Committee. The community members, in summary, stated that the patrons of this bar have in some instances accosted children who live nearby and have exposed themselves to children and adults in the immediate area. LAPD Vice from the Newton Division has well-documented drug use activity and drug sales occurring at Cholinos. Side note, the owner of Cholinos, according to our official record, permits something called B-girl activity, and for those of you who don't know what that is, that's when a woman encourages a patron to buy her drinks at a higher price than the normal price of the drink. She then gets a percentage of the sales. In general, they keep a disorderly business. In fact, after the hearing with the zoning administrator, when the discussion regarding these conditions was pending, they proceeded to advertise a wrestling match between women, totally disregarding the conditions that were already imposed on them and the requirements that were pending with LAPD. This is a nuisance, short, simple, to the point, and a threat to the people who live in the immediate area, so that I hope that you will join me today in opposing them and denying their appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. And members, we do have before us a Planning and Land Use Management Committee report recommending the denial of the appeal and the sustaining the zoning administrator's decision and the conditions that were imposed. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, please, Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That matter is approved, which is the resolution to deny the appeal. Members, I would just like to clarify item number 3, which was a recommendation by the mayor of the appointment of Ms. Julietta Lamano Wells that we acted on, was not a confirmation of an appointment. She had asked that her name be withdrawn. She had to decline the appointment at this time, so that is the action that we did take. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Items numbers 4 through 16 on the regular agenda are items for which public hearings have been held. Item number 16, a motion is required inasmuch as there's 2 reports on 1 file.
Members, any items that the council members would like to call special? I believe Mr. Reyes would like 5, 6, 7, and 8, which are a group of planning cases, so we will call those special, and we do have cards on those files. Anything else? Any other items being called special?
Yes. Item number 16, I'd like to move the plum report on that one and call 22 special, continue that one for 1 week.
I don't think we're yet at 22, but 16
Okay,
we
I'm
will
jumping
call
ahead
special. Okay, 16 is called special as well by Mr. Reyes. Any other items 4 through 16, members? Seeing no other items being called special, Madam Clerk, please open the roll on the remainder of the items. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
All right, those matters are approved.
Item number 4 will be carried over 1 week for a second reading inasmuch as an ordinance.
All right, that will be the action on that. Next items.
Items numbers 17 through 36, with the exception of 22, which has already been acted on, are items for which public hearings have not been held.
I see no cards. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on items 17 through 36? Seeing none, the public hearings are closed on those matters. Members, any items for being called special, 17 through 36? No items being called special. I would like to ask a 34B be continued for a few days so the city attorney can resolve some questions on that matter. So we'll continue that until Friday. The remainder of the items are now before us. Items 17 through 36. Please open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those matters are approved.
And in the same vein, items 17, 18, 19, and 20 are ordinances will be held over for a second reading in 1 week.
Those will be held over.
Madam President, item number 37 is a closed session item. Do you wish that to remain on the desk?
Yes.
So that brings you to the supplemental agenda, items numbers 38 and 39. They are items for which public hearings have not been held.
I see no cards requesting to speak on items 38 or 39. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on those matters? Seeing none, public hearing on those matters is closed. Members, 38 and 39 on the supplemental agenda. Any items to be called special? Seeing no one calling those items special, Madam Clerk, please open the rolls on 38 and 39. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those matters are approved as well.
Item number 38, being an ordinance, will be held over for a second reading in 1 week.
Okay, that'll be the order. That brings us to,
Brings you to your first item called special, item number 5, 6, 7, and 8, called by Mr. Reyes.
okay, Mr. Reyes, the chair recognizes Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think we're going to take them all together.
I would request, if it's in agreement with the council, if we can take 5, 6, 7, 8 together, since they're all dealing with housing issues, and for the sake of efficiency, if we can allow for public comment first, and then provide a few minutes for the planning department to give a quick synopsis of what this means, and then I will do my remarks. So if I can, I'd like to ask if we can have the public hearing. I believe we have some cards. And
Okay. All right, members, we've heard a motion by Mr. Reyes for a public hearing. Ms. Gruhl seconds that. There was a public hearing in committee, but I will ask, since there's no objection from the members of the council, that we will hold a public hearing on this matter. Let's set that for 10 minutes and see how far we get on the cards. Chair first would call Mr. Jim McQuiston.
Jim McQuiston, East Hollywood Community Association. I have only the one comment on item 5. On page 10 of the proposed ordinance, which we didn't get a chance to look at in committee, it lists the specific plan zones, and ordinarily this is just a rubber stamping of what was already in the code, because actually we're dealing with RAS 3 and RAS 4 in this particular item. But there is one specific plan which we bitterly fought over and which is being implemented only half-heartedly by the planning department right now, and it's not listed here. Item 7 should list the Vermont Western SNAP. It's defined as a specific plan, and it goes through the specific plan procedure. We've already gone through one of the specific plan procedures, and it's completely different than the ordinary plans. And in delisting it, since this will occur after the prior plan was approved, it's essentially repealing by indirection the specific plan. And we don't think that that's an appropriate way of including it in the RAS 3 and 4. Right now, we are definitely working in CD 13 on this specific plan, and we do have a lot of questions which have been brought up in the planning department and also in the zoning commissions that we're not getting appropriate responses out of the planning department and the building and safety department, and we do not think that it would be appropriate to leave it out. We suggest an item 7 should include the Vermont Western SNAP, and then we would be happy with all 4 of them.
All right, Mr. McQuiston, we'll have the planning department look into that and respond to you when they make their presentation. Next, I'd like to call Mr. Victor Franco, followed by Chris Stewart, and then Kate Bartolo.
Good morning, members of the council. My name is Victor Franco, Jr., and I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Central City Association. CCA respectfully requests your support for the 4 proposed code changes as recommended by the Planning Department for you today. In the past year, CCA has taken the lead role amongst the business community on a variety of housing production issues. Our efforts included work on a position paper in conjunction with several other LA business advocacy associations. We believe the proposed planning code changes, or amendments before you today, will further our goals, as well as the goals of this council, to create more housing in Los Angeles for all income levels. These proposed changes will not just encourage new housing, but smart housing, including infill development in urban areas, near public transit corridors, and pedestrian areas. CCA wishes to commend the Planning Department for its outstanding work to craft these ordinances that will further increase housing production in a balanced, workable fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Stewart.
Morning, Madam President, members of the council. My name is Chris Stewart, representing the Urban Housing and Mixed-Use Development Council, which has been set up to work and encourage the real estate investment community and development community to utilize this new ordinance to build housing throughout all sectors of Los Angeles. We think it's a very landmark piece of legislation that will encourage the investment community and the development community to do infill housing. One of the major issues that in reviewing the legislation with the institutional investment community and the development community is the current length of time that it requires to go through a zone change. And to the extent that you can encourage the Planning Commission and Planning Department to narrow that, and maybe specifically for RAS applications, we think that you'll see a significant interest and utilization of this new ordinance for housing development by the development and investment community. I want to compliment Jane Blumenfeld and the Planning Department, the Planning Commission. I know this represents, over 3 or 4 years of effort by the city to address the housing issue. We think it does it in a very substantive way. And again, we've committed to work with the council, the mayor's office, and the planning department to introduce this in a formal way to the institutional investment community and development community so that they really understand some of the nuances and how to utilize it to move forward with housing development in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Kate Bartolo, followed by Peter B. Starks Jr. and Luis Cifuentes.
Kate Bartolo, Senior Vice President with the CORE Group. We are in support of the housing reform ordinances for these reasons. From an urban planning perspective, it really places the density where it belongs on commercial corridors. From a development perspective, it simplifies the process, which is greatly needed. For example, our company is presently undergoing the environmental review process for 115 units on Venice Boulevard, which is a major transit way. We are going through a series of variances and conditional use approval requests and adjustments that would be met had we been able to apply for the RAS zoning. Finally, I look forward to the opportunity to working with the council and Plum to shorten the time it takes to achieve the zoning approvals.
Thank you. Peter Starks.
Good morning, Council. It is truly an honor for me to even stand here before you. My name is Peter Starks. I represent New Directions Incorporated. It is a veterans program located on the West Los Angeles VA grounds. For 30 years, I was wrapped up in homelessness. I had resigned myself to that. I'm no longer a part of the problem today. I'm part of the solution. And thank you, sir, for coming and sharing your story with us, because it inspired me. What we have are veterans, men and women, who have paid dues, have made choices, whether they were wrong or right, got caught up in the homelessness issue for whatever reasons. We are a program of veterans helping veterans. What we ask as part of this process of coming out of the pits and the grips of homelessness and nothingness is affordable housing. And my question is, will there be any monies specially allocated for veterans, for homeless veterans, men and women? Thank you.
Thank you. Luis Fuentes, who will be followed by Jan Breidenbach, Josh Yoshimatsu, and Don Garza.
Yeah, my name is Luis Fuentes, and I'm the housing coordinator at New Directions. I work along with Mr. Peter Starks, and as well as the housing coordinator, I'm also a resident currently there. Also, I must reiterate what Peter Starks stated, which was, will there be funds allotted to veterans? And with that, I'll leave you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jan Breidenbach.
Thank you. I'm Jan Breidenbach, the Executive Director of the Association of Nonprofit Housing, and I speak before you this morning supporting these 4 ordinances. Our organization believes that these ordinances will do several things. They will streamline the development process. They will improve certainty in the development process through buy right bonuses and mixed-use zoning. They will increase the amount of infill housing in urban areas, which is a smart growth approach. And they will reduce traffic by encouraging housing near public transit corridors and pedestrian areas. We commend the work of the staff. We know that it's been a long, hard haul. We are very pleased that these ordinances are here before you and encourage your support. Thank you.
Thank you. We thank you for your testimony. John Ishimitsu, Don Garza, Ray Pearl, Beth Steckler. In that order, please. Please proceed, sir.
Hi, my name is Josh Ishimatsu. I'm with the Little Tokyo Service Center, and also I am chair of the Housing and Economic Development Committee for APCON, which is the Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Council, which is an umbrella group that represents some 40 API, Asian Pacific Islander American nonprofit organizations in the Southern California area. And I'm here to speak in support of these 4 proposed ordinance changes. In that I'm someone who works in the trenches developing affordable housing, and I work with a lot of organizations that develop affordable housing, and these changes would help to incentivize affordable housing and to streamline the development process, which are good things in my book. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Don Garza, and I'm a resident of Central City East, what we primarily call Central City East now. I'm here in support of these ordinances because I understand that housing is in short supply for all levels of, all income levels in this city, including the state. This will facilitate the increased supply of housing, especially infill development, affordable development, near the transportation nodes, which is what we need. So I missed school today because I knew how important this thing was. And as a veteran, I do live in subsidized infill housing, and I understand that, and I hope you guys do as what they do, is hopefully increase that type of stock as well. But this is desperately needed, and I congratulate you guys, everybody that's worked on this, because this has been my prayer. This is might be, for some people, this might be a small step, but to me, this is a great step in the great city of LA. I support this wholeheartedly.
Thank you for your testimony. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, members of the City Council. My name is Ray Pearl. I'm the Executive Director of the Building Industry Association in Los Angeles. Very briefly, I'd like to echo the comments of Victor Franco from CCA and of Jan Breidenbach. These are real reforms that will solve real problems and lead to real housing production in Los Angeles. It is a great first step in reforming the development process, and the Building Industry Association urges your support today. Thank you.
We thank you for your testimony. Next speaker, please. All right, Beth Steckler, Ken Jackson, Mary Jane Wagley, and Patrick Tooley. In that order, please proceed, sir.
Council members, my name is Ken Jackson. I'm the Director of Sales for Dynamic Builders, and I have a little different twist on why we think this is a wise move. There's increasing pressure in this city to convert certain industrial parcels of land into a residential use. And our company over the last 40 years has built over 700 buildings for people to own and use for their factories and their warehouses in this town, and about 56,000 people work in our buildings. We think that an added bonus to what you're doing here is that the pressure to convert industrial property into residential will be relieved by increasing the density where it's appropriate, not in truck corridors, not around railroad tracks, but in places where the commercial services are available. We deal with entrepreneurial companies who, when they start in business, they just grow. They grow every place they can. They take every nook and cranny that they can. But at some time, they decide to grow up and move into a productive facility where their efficiencies are better. City of LA has done that. They've grown. We've grown to our limits. Now maybe it's time to grow up. And I think that the density issue is a very wise piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next speaker, please.
I'm Mary Jane Wagley. I'm principal of One Company, a woman and minority-owned development company that specializes in affordable housing, and of Works, which is a nonprofit affordable housing development company. And I strongly support these 4 measures that you are considering today. I want to particularly highlight that we have housing ranging from studios to 4 bedrooms, and the waiting list is longest for the 3 bedrooms and the 4 bedrooms. And this, one of the features of this, group of measures will eliminate the prejudice that has existed in the zoning code for smaller units rather than larger units, and there is an enormous need for larger units. I also am very excited about the support for mixed-use housing. I think it's very important to vitalize the neighborhoods in which housing is located, and I would encourage the City Council also to look and make sure that the financing strategies for the city encourage mixed use in the same way as the zoning now will. Thank you for doing all of this. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there other speakers who wish to be heard at this point? Name, rank, and serial number, sir.
Patrick Tooley from Tooley Development Company.
Yes, sir.
I'm here today to speak in support of the RAS ordinance. Again, my name is Patrick Tooley. I'm the second-generation leader of Tooley Development Company, a company which has developed a community-oriented approach to real estate development in the city of Los Angeles for over 20 years. Our focus moving forward will be on the production of infill-based residential units, and again, I'm here to voice the support for the RAS. I think among a number of accomplishments, the RAS will effectively signal the development community that housing is a priority in the city of Los Angeles and will lead to the creation of moderate-scale housing units for all income levels. I want to commend the Planning Department for the great work that they've done, and again, strongly encourage you to vote favorably on the RAS. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Stephanie Reich. I'm an architect in the City of Los Angeles, AIA member and co-chair of the Urban Design Committee, speaking in support of all of the housings ordinances. We would like to thank Jane and the work of the Planning Department on these ordinances. We feel that they will do a great deal to develop affordable housing where it's needed along transportation corridors and commercial corridors, and develop density in order to reduce traffic and so on. So thank you very much for the good work that you're doing.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And ma'am, the clerk requests that you complete a speaker's card, and if you would do that, we'll have it for our records. Ladies and gentlemen, that does close the public hearing on this matter. We do have 3 persons wishing to be heard. They are as follows: Mr. Burnson, Ms. Mizakowski, and Mr. Reyes, in that order. Chair now recognizes the Honorable Hal Burnson.
Chair, point of order. Chair.
Sir, your point, sir.
I believe we had agreed and voted on allowing the staff to give their 5-minute presentation, a synopsis after the public hearing, then I would speak after them to put down the groundwork on this.
That's fine. In light of that request, let's proceed to the balance of the staff presentation, and Mr. Burnson will recognize you at the conclusion of such.
Okay.
Proceed. Mr. Howell, Ms. Bluver.
There was a question raised by one of the speakers on item number 5 on an omission. Are you aware of that? Mr. McQuiston made a.
Yes.
Could you comment on that? And I don't even need to talk other than that.
All right.
I'm supportive.
Thank you. Mr. Burnson has clarified. Mr. Reyes, you'll be the first speaker. Mr. Howell, Ms. Blumenfeld, if you would proceed with your staff report, and we can dispose of the matter appropriately.
I'm Con Howell, Planning Director for the city. I'm joined by Jane Blumenfeld, Frank Eberhard, Tom Rothman, and other staff. What's before you today are 4 independent ordinances, all dealing with housing. Although they are independent and separate ordinances, they're all mutually supportive. The origin of these ordinances is a couple years ago when the council appointed a task force on a housing crisis. Housing Crisis Task Force made a number of recommendations related to land use and planning. Those recommendations were reviewed by the Planning Commission, by Plum, and by the City Council, and then based on that, the Council directed us to draft these ordinances. We're pleased to come back to you with the ordinances. They have all been recommended to you by the City Planning Commission, and as the Chair of Plum will express, have also been recommended by Plum. The ordinances, as a number of the speakers have noted, deal with separate topics, but they're all mutually supportive. The creation of a new zone, the residential accessory services zone, is, we think, an important tool that can be used in the future. I'd like to emphasize that this just creates the zoning text. It would have to be mapped in individual locations and, of course, through a public process culminating in council action. Two of the ordinances deal with the density bonus, which is mandated by the state. One of them increases the density bonus from the state-mandated 25% to 35% for projects located proximate to transit, which we believe is a smart growth infill approach. And the other allows, by conditional use permit, a greater than 35% bonus, which again would have to be acted on by the City Council. And lastly, as one of the speakers alluded to, is portions of the zoning code and the way we count habitable rooms, which act as a deterrent or a inhibition to creating family-size units. So by changing that to return to what other cities use, which is unit count rather than habitable rooms, we believe it'll remove that disincentive to building family-size units. I'll ask Jane Blumenfeld to answer Mr. McQuiston's question, which I think Councilman Burnson directed to us, if that's all right.
Thank you.
Mr. McQuiston referred to a part of the zoning code that lists zones that were specifically named as new zones in the city in specific plan areas. For instance, Central City West, Porter Ranch, they have specifically named zones, and there's only 6 of them, and the SNAP zone that he was referring to uses the existing commercial zones. It didn't create a new zone, and that's why it did not need to be addressed in this ordinance. It was not necessary. So there's no effect at all in the SNAP zone area.
All right, the chair now recognizes Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Mayor's Office, the Planning Department and staff who's worked hard, and the Housing Crisis Task Force for all the time and due diligence they've given this process. And just as important is the recognition by the development community and the community advocates, the housing advocates. We need to reach a common ground. In the city of Los Angeles, as we all know, the crisis is here. When you have families spending more than 60% of their income just on housing, we know that our families are hurting out in the community. What we are trying to do today is establish a toolbox that allows each council member to invoke and trigger entitlements that they feel could be complementary and supported by the local stakeholders. But now we have a means by which we can create a new envelope of space and take advantage of the markets that are out there. We all know the 3-point-something million people that live here, in this wide range of different characteristics we have in our neighborhoods can allow us to absorb these different types of zones. The issue here and the challenge before us, council members, is are we willing to take the heat? Are we willing to create an environment of controversy, because change promotes controversy? But the issue here is the ultimate benefit will be that we are establishing new markets for housing. So when we have abandoned corridors where the pattern is underused motel, liquor store, abandoned church, an auto shop, and an empty parking lot over and over again in our commercial corridors, and right behind this pattern we have 2, 3, 4 families living in a 2-bedroom home, we have a real problem. In Lincoln Heights alone, Cypress Park, the houses 2-3 years ago were running between $130,000, $140,000, $150,000. Now they're at $225,000, $230,000. So the market is getting worse for those of greatest need. And I'm hoping that we can take to heart this type of opportunity, this toolbox, and literally promote the kind of development that the advocates have been asking for, the development community, the mayor's office, and all the technicians that have labored over this for the last 2 or 3 years. Let's reach a new threshold of opportunities, and let's work together as a new council, knowing that you are in a position to add queue conditions. If you need to shape and mold these kinds of zones, we can work to that end, in coordination with the neighborhood councils, the chambers, the development community, and reach that issue, which is basically a real quality of life notion, a roof over our heads, and a place where our children can sleep. So with that, I ask for an aye vote. I do have some amendments for item 5. It's 5A, B, and C, which I believe is going to be circulated. But with that, I hope we can get a unanimous vote on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. We appreciate your leadership. The chair now recognizes Ms. Mizakowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, want to share in the congratulations all around. And, Mr. Howe, I think I'd only correct one thing you said. You indicated that the origin of this was the Housing Crisis Task Force. I think if you come into my office, I can probably show you 5 or 6 blue ribbon task force studies that go back probably to the late 70s, at least to the 80s for sure, through the administrations of Tom Bradley and Richard Reardon and now Mayor Hahn, where again and again and again, whether we call it the Development Reform Committee of the early 90s or the earlier Housing Blue Ribbon Task Force, what we said were there were some problems. We always would reach the common goal. We should look at mixed use. It works elsewhere. Why can't it work here? It was very clear why it couldn't work here. Our zoning code didn't easily allow it. We applied commercial rules to residential construction. And again and again. And one of the, I think, amazing things of these is not only do we create a new zone that is applicable, but we also take, particularly with some of the amendments, those details that would require each developer to have to go through individually the variances, the special modifications to make something fit. These are now the new rules, the new tools, as Mr. Reyes described, that will make them fit. And the reason we didn't have a large group of people here protesting it is because, again and again, whether we're talking to residential, neighborhood, homeowner groups, or to the business community, there is consensus. Why don't we look at infill? Why don't we look at our commercial corridors? Why don't we look at our regional centers? Why don't we look at those centers that have adequate transit facilities? There is that consensus, and I think we're seeing it. Hopefully we will see it as well as we go through the real application rather than just the enabling ordinances today. But I think after decades of work, decades of going round and round, and all of us sitting at the many, many seminars and the many conferences and the many academic studies, this is the way to go. And to those who asked, is there going to be money? This is perfect timing in terms of the Housing Trust Fund Advisory Committee that just came out last week that starts talking about marrying and wedding the Housing Trust Fund money and the advantages of other money applicabilities to now an enabling ordinance that makes it work. So it's really, I think, heartening today that after those many, many years of saying the same thing over and over and over in Blue Ribbon Task Force after Blue Ribbon Task Force, that we now have delivered today the ordinances that can make it all happen. And I think the Planning Department, the Chair of the Planning Committee, and in particular Jane, who has been at, whether having been a staff at a mayor's office, whether having been a staff member of a city council office, whether having been a zoning administrator yourself going through some of these hearings, or whether now being in the planning department in this special position to help pull it all together, you really deserve a lot of credit for making it happen, as well as those planners who've been, I look at Frank and know that he's been at some of those task forces in years past as well to really make this happen. So congratulations, and let's really now see real evidence of building able to occur in this city to meet these goals that we've talked about for far too long.
Thank you, Ms. Mizakowski. The chair now recognizes Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, President Ridley Thomas. Appreciate that. And Mr. Howe and Ms. Blumenfeld, I'd like you to know that I've got some constituents here from the Westwood part of town, and they have questions about the impact of these proposed ordinances on parking issues in the future. And in particular, the concern is that when you grant the extra density bonus, that you may exacerbate the parking problems we already have in our neighborhoods. And these are problems we face throughout the city. And I'm sure my constituents share the goal, which we all share, which is to try to increase the use of mass transportation, which is what we want to see. I'm just wondering if you have any words you'd like to address to them so they can understand going forward what this would mean for people concerned about parking in residential neighborhoods. If you could hold my time.
I'll briefly explain. Actually, all four ordinances, none of them change the existing parking requirements. So in other words, if it's a certain number of parking spaces required per unit, if there's more units, then those additional parking spaces will be required. So it does not change the existing parking ratios or requirements.
I guess the concern would be that some believe that existing parking rules are already not enough for certain neighborhoods, and if you shoehorn in additional units, you might actually be shoehorning in an even greater portion of a greater number of cars. And I'm just wondering, Ms. Blumenfeld, maybe you have some thoughts on this?
Well, I think the density bonus ordinance in particular only applies in very limited areas, so you only can apply this bonus right at rapid bus stops, at rail stops, at major centers. So it's in a limited area where there's at least the opportunity for transit, and again, the parking was not changed. So while in some places it may be inadequate, it's not increasing the parking requirement citywide for these things, but it's only these particular bonuses, which, by the way, is only a slight increase over what is able to be done right now. So in a 20-unit building, you could add 2 more units under this than now. So I don't really think it's going to exacerbate the parking situation.
Mr. Reyes?
I think one of the strategic uses of this toolbox is that each council member can serve as a steward. So when you invoke and promote the zone in your respective districts, you can go in knowing that we need to deal with the parking issue. And you're in a great position to bring in those stakeholders, those that are concerned, and how to shape that area, that sense of space, with these kinds of conditions. So you'll have that flexibility in working with the planning staff to be able to craft that environment in partnership with those that you would need to work with.
Well, I appreciate that commitment from the chair of our planning committee, and I appreciate the statements from our planning department as well. Going forward, as these ordinances will get approved today, or I expect they will, going forward, I know in my district we'll be working very closely with you on the parking side of the ledger, and we may, I just want to flag it for you now, we may have to have further discussions about further refinements, further options to include in the planning process so that neighborhoods which particularly feel the brunt of parking shortages already can be protected in the event developments that qualify under these ordinances go in. And that's not just a matter that affects CD5, it affects the whole city. And I think we all on this council want to be sensitive to that and will be sensitive to it. But the reality is that, as you all know, Los Angeles is less livable now than it was 10 years ago, and it's going to be less livable 10 years from now because millions and millions of people are going to continue to come to Los Angeles. Whether or not we build it, they will come. And what you have accomplished and what Mr. Reyes has accomplished is an ordinance which is going to enable the city to address these difficult issues on the whole more responsibly in the coming years. And I really want to commend Mr. Reyes because I know how much time you've put into this, Mr. Howe and Ms. Blumenfeld, Planning Commission. I don't see any folks from the Do I see any folks from the commission here today? I don't think so. But it's been a real collaborative effort, and I really congratulate you all on that. And I appreciate the fact that you will remain particularly sensitive to the needs for certain residential neighborhoods to maintain their residential character by addressing difficult parking issues in the future. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. The chair now recognizes Ms. Gruhl, followed by Mr. Burnson, Mr. Zine, and Mr. Reyes for the second time.
I want to thank Councilmember Reyes for his leadership on this issue as a member of the Planning and Land Use Committee. This is quite an accomplishment for you and for our committee, I believe, and the City Council as a whole. And similarly, thank our staff who really came forward, I think, with language that allows us to be creative, to increase our housing and commercial development, particularly in those areas around transit centers, areas in which we want to encourage people to take our public transportation, as well as to make sure that we address this really affordable housing crisis that we have. And as Mr. Reyes mentioned, we have introduced a couple of motions that clarify and allow us to even go a little bit further, I think, than we did in the Plum Committee. So this is really an extraordinary step, and I think Councilmember Misakowski talked about it. I was in Mayor Bradley's office, too, when we talked about this, and Jane was in Mayor Bradley's office at the time when we talked about it. So I think that there is not only some creative minds in the planning department, but a willingness and leadership on the City Council to move forward on these particular items that are going to allow us to have mixed-use developments in those areas that want it. And I think Mr. Reyes mentioned as well, we were particularly concerned that the neighborhood have some involvement in this process, and it is driven by that city council member working with their neighborhoods and the neighborhood councils, and this allows us that flexibility to design something that is unique to that community, because we know in Los Angeles that's what's acceptable in one part of the city of Los Angeles may not be acceptable in other parts, and to try to balance that. So I'm pleased to support these extra motions today that clarify, as well as the package that came from the Planning and Land Use Committee, and look forward to its implementation, and to work with those individuals who came to testify today that this is going to allow them to have some development in areas that heretofore was not available or didn't pencil out necessarily. So just want to say thank you, and look forward to this implementation.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. The chair now recognizes Mr. Burnson.
I think the legislation and the planning process is a step in the very right direction as we move forward to try to meet the needs of our community as it changes today. And the changes have been tremendous in the last few years, and we have to deal with the congestion that's accumulating and so forth. The only one concern I had, and that was displacement of people in the low-cost housing that might not be replaced. That's not included in the ordinance today, but I would suggest, even though I'm not going to be here, but the rest of you members are going to be here, most of you, I think. I would suggest that you take a look at this down the road, and if there isn't funding available for replacement or relocation of these people at the same affordable prices, that you at that time look to amending the ordinance in some manner to provide and require that that be provided when you give your approvals. So other than that, I think this is good legislation. I think we should move forward on it. And I want to thank Mr. Reyes, planning staff, and all the people that worked on it. And of course, I think it's a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. Burnson. The chair now recognizes Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues. A couple questions on this. When we talk about the population of Los Angeles and we have to provide housing, we have affordable housing and the other infrastructure that comes to play. If we look at a cap, do we have a cap? Do we have a maximum number that we can house, or is it unlimited?
Actually, each of the 35 community plans has a projected density for which the existing entitlements, the existing zoning pattern would permit it. In every case, of course, there are more than lives there now, but in some areas it's a larger differential, in others there's less. That is contained in the city's general plan. Now, remember, and this came out in the 2000 census, sometimes there's no new development. You know, there's no additional housing is developed, but the population that lives in the existing housing will sometimes either go up or go down, often depending on the aging process. In areas that have a older average household in age, then it's fewer people per household, and younger families having more kids. But yes, the existing community plans do have projected populations for their existing entitlements.
Okay, so...
And none of this changes that.
This stays within those boundaries? Because I know
Yes,
that
it does.
when I look at our infrastructure, our transportation, and other components, and I understand we need affordable housing, and I strongly support that, no matter where it is. But then I look at an Amundsen project, a project that is not going to provide affordable housing, but will provide high-cost housing to the affluent people who can afford that, which doesn't complement what this is trying to do to provide affordable, decent housing to the people of this region. And the question is, can we continue process with this? Or are there any federal mandates? For example, we have a city of 4 million. Could we go to 8 million? Could we go to 12 million? Is there a cap where we finally say, we've reached our cap and we can't open the doors anymore? Or is that part of the equation or not?
Well, I would say we believe, because these are ordinances that promote infill development, they're actually the antidote to the Amundsen ranches of the world, because they are promoting small-scale infill development. And in that sense, it's really an entirely different approach than these mega projects like Amundsen Ranch.
Well, the sprawling projects, and I compliment Councilman Reyes. I know that his career in government and to provide decent, affordable, safe housing and work environment for people, and I commend you on that. I know he's very dedicated to that, and we've discussed this with all these other components of the infrastructure, trying to have it all connect together. But I just have a fear that while we have one piece moving forward, our transportation and our other infrastructure, for example, the 85 schools we need to build, people ask where we're going to find sites for that as this population continues to explode, where we don't have the other components that we need to provide for the public safety. Because obviously with a home, you need to have the other infrastructure that supports the home, the schools, the shopping centers, the markets, the doctors, I mean, all that. But the infill, obviously, to me, is a better way, and I've said it many, many times. Let's take the inner city, let's take the areas that need to be improved and invest in those areas and continue on that process. But my other question I originally asked is, do we have a cap or don't we have a cap?
There is not an actual legal cap to the number of people who could live in the city.
All right, thank you.
The Honorable Ed Reyes.
Thank you. Just a couple of points. Councilman Zine, regionally, we do need to have some kind of a vehicle which we deal with this regional growth, and that's why it's important to support members like Councilman Bernson and the SCAG committee and these other regional networks in which the city should be much more aggressive in how we make neighboring cities and counties accountable, but that's a whole other subject matter. But I appreciate that concern, because you're right, we need to figure out how we deal with the regional issue. The other point I wanted to make in closing is that when we look at our overall infrastructure as a city, the reason why we're pushing so hard on the river system, why we're building new high schools, we're literally building 3 to 4 new high schools in District 1, 4 to 5 new primary centers, is because we need to deal with this density issue. And this is but one set of tools that we have. We need to be much more comprehensive as we work with the new chief. He's working with 9,000 officers, and we literally need 18,000 officers to deal with this public safety issue. When we have what I call smaller sub-regional areas within the city that reflect whole countries from other parts of the world, these are other challenges we have in communication and organizing. So this is a very complicated process we're going to as an international city. So this is but one set of tools. It's not the silver bullet. It's not going to cure all our problems, but it gets us closer to defining approach in dealing with these very complicated issues. I got to tell you that AB 283, we downzone good parts of the city. With this, we're able to now craft and look at different nodes of development that complements rail and our intermodal facilities that hopefully will bring in a new layer of shuttle systems that complements buses and rail lines. So we can go on this subject. But bottom line is, I appreciate your support. We need to make this affirmative step and encourage private development in concert with neighborhood concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes, and we appreciate your work and leadership on this matter. Members, we've exhausted the speaker queue at this point, and that gives indication that we're ready to dispose of the item. Mr. Reyes.
Yes, I believe we have 3 amendments, 5A, B, and C, or?
There's a new 5A that has incorporated C into it, is my understanding, so there's 5A and 5B.
Great.
All right, we are in order. On the amendments, Mr. Clerk, please open the roll. Close the roll. Now tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
All right, on the entire matter, Mr. Clerk, is that in order?
As amended.
As amended, please proceed with the opening of the roll. Close the roll. Now tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Thank you very much. We can proceed with the next item before us.
Mr. President, as a note to those items, the ordinances will be held over for a second reading in 1 week.
All right, pursuant to our protocol.
The next item is item number 37, which is a closed session item. Do you wish that to continue to remain on the desk?
I think we should hold that on the desk and proceed to the next item.
Okay, motions for posting and referral.
All right, posted and referred.
Council members request for excuse from council attendance. Councilmember Miskowski requests to be excused on November 22nd for city business to leave at 11:30. A motion is required.
All right, Mr. Zine moves, Ms. Gruhl seconds, and that will be the order. Permitted.
Councilmember Gruhl requests to be excused on December 10th to leave at noon for city business. This meets policy.
All right, Mr. Pacheco moves, Ms. Miskowski seconds, and that will be the permitted.
Councilmember Weiss requests to be excused on December 11th to leave at 11:30 for city business. This also meets policy.
All right, then it's in order and we should proceed.
Now is the time for public comment on non-agenda items.
All right, let's see if we have anyone wishing to be heard. I think we do. Chair now recognizes for a public comment portion of our agenda, Mr. Wiley C. Brown. Sir, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank you and all the members of the City Council for granting me this privilege to appear to make another appearance before the council. The Chairman, I would like to reiterate some statements that I made at the last previous appearance before the City Council. If the City Council, if the City Attorney, or any administrator in City Hall can disprove the statements in my affidavit relating to fractures in my upper back, which are irreparable fractures, and injuries at other areas that I mentioned in my affidavit, I will not pursue this matter any further. Now, however, the main reason I'm here, due to the fact that the city attorney hadn't responded to Councilman Thomas's request for a settlement in this matter. And also, while I'm representing myself, I would like to quote from a letter who was written to me by a noted attorney. And I quote, according to the previous medical reports on file in this case, there do not appear to be any physical defects upon which your continued pain and discomfort can be predicated. Now, the reason for that is it's a fraud. I have physical evidence, x-ray evidence, that there are fractures in my back and rib cage that indicates pain. As a matter of fact, I think it's fair to say that I have complete fractures in my rib cage. And also, I certainly have green stick fractures in my rib cage near the sternum, the bone in the center of your chest. And it's causing internal bleeding. There's physical evidence that it's causing internal bleeding. So therefore, at this time, also, I've been subjected to much terror. Shotgun pellets have been fired into the side of my house. A brick was thrown through my window. The suspect who did that was mentally deranged. Fortunately, I was able to subdue him. And the police was in the proximity of my house when this happened, and they came by and they took him into custody, and I was told that they would get in touch with me, but that never happened. And also, last but least, all those suspects in the Rampart scandal were violating the law. They are still human beings. They were abused by the police. And I commend the city council for the way the matter was handled.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. We appreciate your testimony.
I'd like to make another. Mr. Thomas, I haven't, the city attorney hasn't responded to that request that you had forwarded to him for settlement in this matter.
Yes, sir. And you should expect a response. My deputy, Mr. Palais, just came up to speak with me about that, and the city attorney is duly notified as to what it is he should do, and I expect that you'll be notified based on his disposition.
And also at this time, Mr. Councilman Thomas, I would like for you, the fact that I've served this affidavit on all the members of the city council, I would like for you to make a resolution, make a motion to the city council for a resolution on this matter. Because if the statements in that city council are unfactual, I should be indicted and taken into custody by this officer here immediately.
Please don't provoke him, sir. Mr. City Attorney, would you wish to respond to this matter? Sir?
We've taken his information and we'll look into it.
All right. These are the representatives of the City Attorney's Office, Mr. Brown, and you should feel free to be in conversation with the gentleman who just spoke, and I think your guidance will be provided most efficiently or directly by him. We thank you for your testimony.
But thank you for your patience with me.
All righty.
But I've been on an investigation for 36 years.
Thank you, sir.
And I certainly hope to have all the evidence. My adversaries did everything humanly possible to obstruct justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Members of the council and ladies and gentlemen of the public, that closes the public comment portion of our agenda. Mr. Clerk.
Item number 37, a closed session item.
All right. Madam City Attorney, Mr. City Attorney, are we ready for our closed session? You want to give the appropriate indications, Mr. City Attorney, as to our justification for doing so?
Yes, it's litigation. We are going into closed session pursuant to that.
Thank you very much. Those who are in the chamber, we would ask you now to permit us to follow the appropriate government code that permits us to go into executive session on matters that pertain to litigation. Sergeant, if you would be kind enough to clear the chamber. Madam Clerk, Mr. Clerk, what's before us?
Mr. President, item number 37 is before you. It is a request from the city attorney to authorize expenditure of $300,000 in settlement of the Jorge Cisco Aguilar versus Harper case.
All right. On that matter, please open the roll. I see. Mr. Holden, you wish to be heard on this item?
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Proceed.
Why are we paying this money, or suggesting that we pay out this money, the amount?
To whom might that question be directed, Mr. Holden?
To the city attorney.
All right. I think the city attorney has just vacated, but Mrs.
We have the city
Weingart,
attorney.
would you like to address that?
Mr. Holden, if we're going to go back, we're going to discuss the points of this litigation, we would recommend that this be done in closed session.
Oh, well then we shouldn't go in closed session. Only to say that I'm going to vote no because this has another Rampart ting to it. And this guy, we should not be paying out this money if the police officer didn't do anything wrong. So if they did, then we need to know that to be the case. And there's no evidence to suggest that they did anything wrong, so why should we give away the money? I'm voting no.
All right. Mr. Zine.
That no vote.
All right.
Mr. Zine.
That clears the
Cops stick
speakers
together.
list. Mr. Clerk.
We're cops.
Mr. Clerk, would you please open roll on item number 37? Close the roll. Now tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 2 noes.
All right, that will be the order in that instance.
Thank you, Mr.
Next item forthwith, at the request of the Chair of Public Safety.
The desk is clear, Mr. President.
All right, this is now clear. Members, are there announcements that anyone wishes to make? Are there adjourning motions? If so, please rise. For the adjourning motions, Mr. Holden.
Mr. President, members, a great performer, entertainer, actor, James Colburn, died yesterday. It's according to the news, in his wife's arms after a heart attack. Mr. Colburn was an Academy Award-winning actor whose career spanned 4 decades. In 1999, he won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in the movie. He played an abused, alcoholic father in the movie, Affliction. At that time, he was age of 70, still a young man. Mr. Colburn was born in Nebraska in 1928. He studied acting in New York, Los Angeles under Stella Adler. During his long career, he appeared on New York stage in television and movies, commercials, and in recent years did voice work in animated film. Some of his movie credits include The Magnificent Seven, Our Man Flint, and The Nutty Professor. Mr. Colburn is survived by his wife, Paula, and 2 children. I might say, Mr. President and members, that last Christmas celebration, I met Mr. Colburn and his family at a social gathering. Extremely perfectly nice gentleman, kind person, and anyone who met him, I'm sure, liked him as I did. He's a loss, certainly by his passing in the profession that he served in entertainment, but he also is a fine person that he was. That'll be lost also. So I ask that we respectfully adjourn in his memory.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Others who wish to adjourn. Mr. Pacheco, please.
Mr. President, colleagues, just wanted to adjourn in memory of Rogelio Pena, who was a neighbor of mine throughout my childhood in Bow Heights. He passed away on October 21st of a heart attack. He was basically Prior to about 5 years ago, was a lifelong resident of Ball Heights, worked very well and closely in the neighborhood, was a hardworking man, worked as a trucker, and most importantly, was one of the first families that welcomed my parents into the neighborhood. Survived by his spouse, by his children, Armida, Rogelio, and Carlos Peña. Ask that we adjourn in his memory.
Thank you, Mr. Pacheco. Mr. Zine?
Mr. Chair, and Councilmember Jan Perry joins me, and also Councilmember Nick Pacheco. Request the adjournment in memory of Rex Eugene McCullen, passed away on November 17th. Rex was born May 29th, 1936, and he came to Los Angeles in 1938 to live most of his life in the Silver Lake area. Rex graduated from John Marshall High School, where he was a recognized athlete. Played Major League Baseball while raising his young family. Minor League Baseball while raising his young family, and later became a neon electrician. His main interest in life was his family. He participated in his grandchildren's school and community sports. Rex was a simple man, but will be remembered for his generosity to others and his ability to open his home and heart to anyone who asked. He leaves behind his adoring wife, Maria, his 4 daughters, Veronica Becerra, Bridget Brandon, Rexanne, and Janie McKellen, and 4 grandchildren, Raina, William, Rex, Courtney, and Dolls. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. We're now adjourned.